10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back to the Banger Bar, everyone, and to this week's episode of Lock Horns, where each week we pick apart the notorious, the infamous, the celebrated, or not so celebrated heavy metal family tree that we here at Banger created over 10 years ago for our first film, Metal Ahead Banger's Journey. Before we get into it, a reminder to please subscribe to Banger TV. We're in the process of building an all-metal global digital channel. That's right, a metal channel that's just about metal for metalheads worldwide. It's never existed. We want to make it happen. And secondly, we want to remind you that we are now the official metal curators on Apple Music. Banger has several playlists over there that lock into Lock Horns and to some of the other things that we are doing here on Banger TV. This week, glam metal. You guys know from Metal Evolution, not the biggest glam metal fan on the planet, wearing my Enslaved shirt, so we'll see how this goes. But thankfully, I have a very well-informed host to join me in the studio, Priya Panda from the band Diemonds, who are a Juno nominated, and for those of you who don't know, that's our Canadian Grammys for their latest record, Never Wanna Die. Check this out. Live TV here at the Banger Bar. Priya Panda.
Hey, what's up?
How are you? Nice to meet you. Not shaking hands. Got a bit of a cold. Got a frog in my throat, but thankfully Priya's going to help me get through this.
Yes.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. I'm very good. Tell me a little bit about how you got into glam, what it is you love about this style of metal.
I'm gonna get right into it, I guess. And like one of the first bands that influenced me is Guns N' Roses. And they're such a contentious band on this list. But for me, they kind of opened the door into more of the deeper bands like Motley Crue and Rat and Skid Row, and it just kind of went deeper and deeper from there. But Guns N' Roses was definitely the first. And another big one was Kiss. That combination of image and like just solid tunes was like really appealed to me, and that kind of, you know, speaks of this genre.
Very cool. Kiss and Guns N' Roses, I think there's a lot of fans out there. Tell me a bit about your band, Diemonds. Do you consider yourselves a glam metal band? How would you describe yourselves?
I think I guess it goes along with this debate as well. You were mentioning that we're nominated for Juno. We're nominated in the heavy metal category, which some people, you know, like with the broad range of metal that's displayed in the nominations, I think that we represent one aspect of it, maybe the more, you know, more the glam metal, the easier to kind of palatable, more metal. But yeah, I think we're a heavy metal band, we're a hard rock band,
Awesome.
We're a punk band too.
That's what we're here to debate. Are we all one family or a bunch of separate tribes? That's what kind of fuels Lock Horns. So there are lots of things to discuss and debate, I think, today, not just bands that belong or don't belong, but a lot of topics, I think, about is it metal? Is it just nostalgia? Is it a genre just based on look? Is there a cohesive sound? Let's park those, though, because what I want to remind everyone is that it's all about having your say out there. We want your opinions about what you think of the glam metal chart, but most importantly, why you feel the way you do. We know from previous shows that there's a lot of strong opinions out there. Bon Jovi belong? Do we talk about Pantera? No one wants to mention Celtic Frost. Sorry, Tom. Anyway, we'll get into it in a second. A reminder that off camera, my voice just broke. That's the first time. Is Lisa Latisseur, and when you hear this sound,
Ding!
it means usually that I need to shut up. Okay, let's lay some groundwork here.
Okay.
What is glam metal?
For me, I think it's a mix of like heavy metal, punk rock, glitter rock, and glam, which is the 70s stuff, and then as well as in the end, it kind of got really influenced by blues. So like Aerosmith, I think, was a big precursor of the genre, as well as like Van Halen.
Yeah.
And then, I think that's kind of makes the basis of the sound.
Now also, and it'll be a matter of great debate, it's one of the few genres that's arguably defined or named based on a look. Do you agree with that, or do you disagree?
That it's the only genre based on.
Well, that it is basically about a look. That's what unifies all of these bands, or is it more of a sound thing in your opinion?
I think it's a combination. I think that because they draw influences from bands that had a big image, I think they kind of all pulled into that. Like, they all look up to bands that really looked like bands.
Right,
so.
right.
Whether it be in the punk genre like Sex Pistols or like Aerosmith or Van Halen, they all look like they're part of a cohesive group, hung out together and liked partying and making music together. And I think it might, like, the look and the sound are kind of, they go hand in hand.
Partying's important sometimes. We take this stuff a little too seriously, and I think sometimes glam metal, whatever we want to call this, reminds us that maybe metal should be, at the end of the day, about having a good time. Of course, there's the debate whether it's metal at all, and we'll get into that. But I do want to throw to a clip here because I interviewed Ricky Rocket a few years ago when we did the series Metal Evolution, and one thing he brought my attention to was actually a connection between punk rock and glam, which I never really thought of, but in essence, there was kind of a fuck you attitude
For sure.
in glam that
100%.
also ran through the punk bands. So check this out, Ricky Rocket from Poison.
In your view, what about Poison is heavy metal?
Well, I mean, definitely the tones of the guitar, the approach to the instrument is heavy metal.
Yeah.
As far as, lyrically and melodically, it's not always necessarily heavy metal. Sometimes it's heavy metal bebop, or whatever you want to. I mean, there's, it's all over the place. It was a new kind of punk rock, if you look at it from that standpoint, because it was breaking the mold. It was being creative. It was being outside the norm. It was taking all these influences, doing something new with it. It was everything that what punk rock really stood for. And we were just kind of laughing, going, aren't we really the new punk rock in a way? No, I guess not, because it sounds too much like Van Halen chords, so that's not going to work for Rolling Stone magazine.
Admittedly, for this curmudgeonly extreme metaler, came away from that interview with some newfound respect for Ricky Rocket, talking, well, A, we are metal, and B, we've got kind of a punk rock ethos. Do you agree with that kind of punk rock connection there?
Yeah, I mean, I see it in some of the, like, definitely in their behavior and some of their stage shows. The notorious MTV Awards where CeCe DeVille kind of, went crazy, and it was like at the end of the era, so he, totally messed up their show. That totally is from the punk, not giving a crap about anything.
Yeah, very cool. Not a connection I considered. Anyway, enough agreeing. We're here to lock horns. We're going to turn to the board. First off, we've got Elliot Memmi on Facebook who says, in a well-rounded paragraph, I think where a lot of people trip up with glam is that they only remember the ballads from the later 80s, early 90s. Early 80s glam was essentially Nawabum music with a slightly greater focus on sex and more elaborate costumes. Dokken and Rat often have songs that are as heavy as the average Judas Priest or Maiden. And Scott Witt on Twitter says that I think it's funny that fans hate this for being cheesy, but a guy in corpse paint in a graveyard is true. I love it all. Great songs are great songs. I think many are put off by the videos. Wing are amazing musicians. I mean, do you get that, Priya, that you kind of, people don't take you entirely seriously? Does that bother you?
I mean, and it doesn't bother me because I don't care, but yeah, I think that comes part and parcel with the genre. It's something that you kind of have to, like, really carry the torch for. It's not something you're kind of in partially, especially in 2016, it's something that you either love or...
For sure.
you remember.
Yeah, very cool. And 2016, here we are. We're still talking about glam metal, and a lot of people said it would die. Okay, the elephant in the room. We're going to talk about this band, Bon Jovi. Now, a lot of people have claimed in advance of today's Lock Horns that, in fact, they do not belong. Our buddy, Sean Petersa from Witch Doctor in South Africa. Hello, Sean. How you doing, buddy? On Twitter says, I say no. Bon Jovi were rock, and Elliot Memmi is back. If you have a pop metal section, I feel Bon Jovi, Poison, and Warrant are probably a better fit over there, along with Def Leppard, Vixen in Europe. I would save glam for the earlier and sleazier bands who had more in common with the Nwabum. Lots of opinions here. I guess within this...
I disagree. I think if there was a pop metal section, Bon Jovi or Poison and probably Def Leppard would be the forerunners of that.
Right.
Bon Jovi, I think, was more of like a working man's rock with a little bit more of the look, but even the sound, they were super proficient musicians. And I think that always came first with Bon Jovi.
Kevin Albanowski on Facebook chimes in. Bon Jovi is very important to talk about here. First two albums were very metal. They hit it big with Slippery When Wet, but the metal elements were still there on Slippery New Jersey and Keep the Faith before they drifted off and became what they are now. I agree with them being on the chart. Okay, but just to kind of get the juices flowing, I might just set them off to the side because I think there might be an argument that they're not as glam as some of the other artists on the board. Meteor09 says that Bon Jovi is definitely more rock, but they were part of the scene.
I mean, I was a little bit young to have actually been there, but I mean, all the bands sort of were grouped into the scene because they were popular bands on the radio, but I'm not sure that they were the same type of music. They might have adopted a little bit more of the same look, but...
Right. And maybe I'm overthinking it, but I'm not maybe seeing that kind of... If indeed there is kind of a punk rock
They had no
thing.
edge. They were really
Exactly.
good guys. He's been married to the same person for the whole time. You know, it just, I don't know.
Just doesn't fit.
It just doesn't have the same.
All right. What's up, Lisa? What's next?
Well, no one cares if they're good guys.
That's true. Although, I think maybe your point about the edge, seeing more like from that sort of more Aerosmith kind of 70s hard rock kind of tradition rather than coming in with some of the
Aerosmith,
the English glam.
The Aerosmith hard rock tradition is like being an insane person, and that's a whole. It reflects in the music and the songwriting and the stage show. Bon Jovi was probably I've never heard of anything personally of them having like crazy meltdowns on stage or on tour or interpersonally so much. Well, now with the Richie Sambora Bon Jovi thing, but like back in the 80s, they all seemed to get along well, and they weren't.
You heard it here, Priya Panda. If you want to be a glam metal band, you got to lose your shit. Sorry, you got to fall apart.
Little bit.
What's up, Lisa?
Well, that doesn't explain why everyone thinks Guns N' Roses need to go.
Exactly. GNR, and they're back. Many people excited about that.
Sort
on
of
the board.
back.
We've got Roxanne Shaddix. Any relation to the band from Papa Roach? Perhaps don't know. I think that GNR has to go, even said it themselves, that they were anti-glam. They have that 80s sound, but they also they were a lot more gritty than the other glam bands at the time. Paul Leach, GNR need to go. Horror Master, for sure, GNR and Quiet Riot have to go, because I think when I think of glam metal, I see it as bands that talk about love, women, sex, etc., and that more than 75% of their audience is women. That's an
Okay, but then
point.
for Guns N' Roses, they do talk about sex and women all the time, like it's and drugs.
I think there's some thin ice there, Horror Master, but let's hear what you think. We've got B. Roberts, 878 GNR, had the glam metal look, but didn't have the glam metal sound.
I think that a lot of the bands might not have had all their songs be glam metal, or they might not have started out that way, but when it became one of the most popular types of aggressive music on the radio, a lot of the bands just adopted it in order to be a part of it, and
for sure,
be relevant, stay current.
A lot of lines in the sand in this episode. They just keep on moving. But I guess, if anyone cares about my opinion, which I'm not going to ask, these don't belong in glam metal. I think that they are much more of a hard rock tradition, and I know that there was some.
This is like
there was some high hair,
Aerosmith.
but anyway, for what it's worth, that's my opinion. Lisa, Who are we going to debate next? We want Priya's opinion.
Yeah, no one
On-
has talked about Motley Crue yet, but I know that Priya has a few things to say about that.
Tell us about
Yeah,
Crew. Terrible band.
I
Just
love 'em.
joking.
I'm just kidding. I know I've seen them live 21 times, so I love them. I did not see them on the farewell tour, so I cannot comment. But
Right.
their tradition of music and metal is like, to me, they pretty much put out one of the first glam metal albums with Too Fast for Love.
Right.
And it was super early in the 80s, 81, I think. So that was definitely kind of set the tone for the rest of the
And had
decade.
that punk rock kind of ethos.
Definitely had the
as
punk
well.
rock
Yep.
ethos, and then it definitely had like the Judas Priest ethos, and then the style.
For sure.
Definitely, where they were still metal but they were like scary. It wasn't. It hadn't watered down into the like where everyone was nice and had the poodle perms, right?
And when I interviewed Nikki Sixx for our series Rock Icons, where we featured him, it was really interesting. He was huge into Bowie. He was huge into T-Rex.
Slade,
so he
the
was
Sweet.
Slade. He was really tapped into that British glam scene. So
Big time, and they melded that like with the British heavy metal, like the Nawabum and the glitter stuff. That was kind of like their basis. And then over the years that they were also influenced by punk, just their stage personas and
Right.
whatnot. But also they covered Anarchy in the UK eventually.
Yep. Well,
So-
we got some comments on the board here. We got on Crew, we got Conde, Motley Crue, the baddest of the bad. Thank you. And we've got some other comments in, but I can't quite read them. There they are. The Earthbound Lucifer, Motley Crue, definitely glam, but I kind of like their early material for earring closer to traditional metal and actually sounding like glam rock at
Which
the
we
same
just
time.
discussed.
Yep, Dion R. Motley Crue invented glam metals. We know it's interesting. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot here. Do they start something new? Do you think, Motley Crue? I mean, they seem to break free from their sort of...
They're heavily influenced by things of the past, but they definitely interpreted it in a way that like North America and like the world in general, I guess, was ready for.
Yeah. I mean, LA had Van Halen, but by the time Crue were starting to come up, they were playing stadiums and touring the world on Learjets. So I think there was a bit of room there, and they seemed to really combine that glam with that punk rock, but also that 70s hard rock.
And
thing we've been
glitter
talking.
stuff, yeah.
And glitter. What's up, Lex, Lisa? We don't have a lot of opinions about Motley Crue on the board.
It's
because they're pretty hard
it's
to
There's
just-
nothing to argue about.
It's just no one's locking horns on Motley Crue. They are they're meant to be there. So the glam look, I guess, is one thing we wanted to get into. This question about whether it's a style or a sound, we touched on it earlier. I guess I have a hard time seeing, I'm pushing it here maybe, but I'm having a hard time seeing like a cohesive sound that unifies all these bands.
I think the guitar approach and also the tone too is indicative of glam metal.
Right.
The playlist, for example, that I helped curate for Apple Music. I picked songs by the bands that I picked that weren't necessarily they're contentious bands, but I think those particular songs that I picked encapsulate the sound. So I imagine every band has at least a few songs that fit the criteria.
So tough question, can you be a glam band without a glam look?
Yes, I think that into the 90s, a lot of the bands kind of tried to move more away from the look. We were talking about earlier off screen, we're talking a little bit about Nitro, who, when they came out at the end of the decade, they were almost like the most extreme band ever with like the hair and like the four-necked guitars and just like the vocal range. He breaks glasses with his voice and all this stuff. And then from that video for Freight Train into their next video, he's wearing a cut-off grunge shirt. He has his hair tied back in a ponytail, backwards cap, and it's almost like you couldn't even tell that they're the same band from one video to the next because they like panicked. You know, it was the 90s.
Yeah, time to change. Grunge was coming. Something you said to Lisa before we got started on camera actually is this idea that maybe glam metal is an attitude rather than a look, which I kind of thought was an intriguing comment.
I agree with that too, which is where I've kind of brought up if you're more like, I don't think many of the bands on this list were trying to be like good influences or like that's why Stryper comes up because of their like religious affiliation. I'm not sure that they belong because of their message. I don't know if the bands necessarily had a message until they came through at the end of the tunnel and were like, holy crap, we just spent like a decade doing heroin or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
You know.
And speaking of the look, you recently got voted one of the hottest women in rock, I understand, and Revolver. Congratulations.
Thanks.
What's your attitude? What's your feelings about that? About being recognized for your appearance?
Well, I'm not hiding the fact that I'm a female at all. So, you know, I definitely accentuated and played up. But it's cool. It's cool to be recognized for my music through, if you know, my looks. It's hard to get recognition out there.
Sure.
So
yeah.
It's cool. It's cool to be recognized. All the other females that are out on the list, we have all been working really, really hard over the years. None of them, I've been following all of them for many years, so we've all kind of come up at the same time, and it's been a slow build for all of us. So it speaks of the fact that we've been working, that we're in there in the first place.
And also, I mean, a look is something you cultivate, right? It's something you create. It's like, I guess, it's part of your identity, right? So it's maybe a recognition that it's hard to carve out a place in the music world.
It's true.
Good job. Well done. Speaking of the look, we're going to throw to another clip. My buddy Scotty, who's never short on opinions about glam metal and its appearance, and also Sammy Hagar, who chimes in as well. These guys are going to lock their own horns. Check this out.
We fucking hated it. Like, the fact that they were calling Poison a metal band, and I don't know if Poison called themselves a metal band. I doubt Poison called themselves a metal band. They were rock and roll. But the fact that the media was calling these bands metal, it drove us fucking crazy, because that's not metal. We were metal. Iron Maiden is metal. That shit that was coming out of LA and anywhere else where you had guys dressing like girls was not fucking metal. And that it made us sick. You know, for every Motley Crue and Skid Row, which I can't even call glam bands, but if they were a part of that scene, whether or not they wanted to be, but for every Motley Crue and Skid Row, you had fucking Trickster and 100 other shitty fucking bands that were just unlistenable. Just the stupidest fucking lamest shit you've ever seen, playing the most bubblegum bullshit pop music ever. And it wasn't even rock. It wasn't even rock and roll. It was fucking lame ass pop music with fucking hairdos and ladies' clothes.
You could get away with it. Full-blown makeup, lipstick, glitter, hair all ratted up, dyed, you know, high-heeled shoes, and you know, damn snakeskin, skin-tight pants and stuff, man. And I mean, hey, you know, the rednecks were calling you fags and stuff walking down the street, but you know, the scene, you were cool and you were accepted, and the chicks were like, you know, all over the place. So coming into that scene is what it created for me as a writer, and as the way I dressed and the way I performed. It was all for sex. It was all about, you know, trying to turn chicks on and trying to have girls, you know, jump on stage and pull your hair out, you know, and after the show, having a line of groupies out in the back door, and they were there in those days. I mean, it was amazing when I look back.
Well, there you go. There's an age-old scuffle, right, between the old-school Thrasher and the eternally youthful Sammy Hagar. That guy's like 92. He looks younger than me. I don't know how he does it. Yeah, it's the tequila and the sunshine and all those fast cars. But yeah, that's kind of a window into the debate that continues to rage on about, you know, whether the look should really matter at the end of the day. We're moving on, though. Every week, of course, we offer our guests an opportunity to add an artist to the board. And Priya, tell me about the band you want to add.
I kind of went through this in my head a little bit. There's Kix, Tortora. There's a lot of bands. Vane, who's actually probably one of my favorite artists in the genre. But I picked WASP. I know they're debated because some people are just like, they're just metal. They're heavy. They're evil, which is exactly why I think that they belong on this list. They had the riffs, they had the songs, and they had the look, and they still drew from the early influences before it got super watered down. Right. Before it was just, you know, light and palatable. Yep. There was WASP.
Awesome. So. There's WASP on the board. It's interesting you mentioned that because I think you're kind of exposing that line between shock rock and glam, because we actually put WASP in shock rock because of the slightly more darker imagery and sort of kinship with like the Alice Coopers of
But
the
I
world.
think earlier on, this
Yeah.
was shocking.
Right.
It's hard, like I wasn't around back then, so it's really all like subjective, but that's how I see it from now. Like there's all that PRMC stuff, and
Yeah.
WASP was like the top of that.
That's right. FUCK like a beast, infamously spoken by the Washington Wives in the Senate in the early 80s. Let's see if people agree or disagree. Priya, Joe, can you see? Cute. On Twitter, God include WASP. They were part of original Big Four that came out of LA. The Big Four of glam. Okay, this is new language. With Motley, Rat, and Dawkins. All agree are
Yep.
Roxanne Shaddix, Justin Smith, and Ruben Conde Vizoso. So you've got some allies out
Yes.
there in WASP land. Are there any other bands that we want to add to the chart today? Lisa, what are the people saying out on the board? Whitesnake. We got a t-shirt in the house. Horror Master, Whitesnake need to be added. GH Zero Strider 2006, making me work there. Agree. Great. Yeah, Whitesnake, Great White 2. What do you think about Whitesnake?
I think Whitesnake were, I think in the original documentary they are in the pop metal. Is that where you kind of file them in?
It's a band with a long career, so it gets complicated.
Exactly, yeah, because they kind of were the same, like dudes making like a sleazy album as opposed to really changing who they were and their roots.
Right.
And I think that they still, I think a lot of bands in that time, like I said, adopted the sound because they wanted to stay relevant, current, and have a pop, like a hit single.
For sure.
And like some really great music came out of that.
Yep.
Like this album
Yep.
is amazing, and I think it was definitely a glam metal
I mean,
album.
it's there's a lot of discussion about it, of course, because Here I Go Again was an earlier Whitesnake song that went through this whole reproduction. They got John Kalodner, who was the
Right.
sort of guru in LA, and kind of reinvented the band, gave it a different production, and bam, you know, put Tawny on the roof of the car, and you've got
Here we go.
something stratospheric on offer. But we don't have a Whitesnake card, do we, Lisa? So let's see what people have to say once we get Whitesnake.
I don't
on
know that
the
everyone agrees,
board.
though. You might want to hold off there.
Oh yeah, well, let's see. Let me get it up. Whitesnake, bear with me. There you go. We'll put it there for the moment. Thrash Maniac 99. Okay, there's a glam metal fan. Whitesnake was only glam for one album. They're more hard rock, blues rock. There's a fair argument there.
I
Meteor
think they're a
09.
combination of hard rock, blues rock, and like metal, which is exactly what
Right.
glam metal is.
Yeah, and it's, again, if you
extent.
get these bands with long careers, you're even starting to see it with bands like Opeth, which aren't considered like an old band, who have had several versions of the band because they need to evolve and they want to change, and they might want to sell a few records. Media 09 says yes. Whitesnake and Hanoi Rocks were huge influences on the
Hanoi
glam
Rocks
scene.
was absolutely a huge influence on the glam scene, but I'm not sure that they themselves were glam metal. They were more of like a precursor, especially with the look and like the attitude and the lifestyle, which
For
was
sure.
a huge thing for
sure.
a lot of these bands. I think
Absolutely.
Hanoi Rocks was one of the first.
Paul Leach says also that Whitesnake simply tried to stay relevant during the glam years. Point taken. And the Earthbound Lucifer says that Whitesnake are hard rock and blues rock, kind of pop oriented, but not glam metal. So let's just put them out here on the side, because clearly there are some horns being locked. Hanoi Rocks has come up again on the board. Matthew Marian, pardon the pronunciation, on Facebook. The most important band missing has got to be Hanoi Rocks. They released their first album in '81 and had a huge influence on the Sunset Strip scene. They started out with more punk flavorings, but certainly with the heavy taste of what became glam metal. Much like GNR, I'd say they had a better hard rock sound, but I think they deserve a spot on the list. Very articulate we're getting
Fair
on the
point.
boards here.
They definitely started out with more punk flavorings.
So what do you think? Do we add them or not, Priya? I need you here. It's a big moment.
I've never personally considered them, I consider them more in the realm of like New York Dolls or something.
Okay, yeah.
They were just like the bands drew from them, but they weren't. They were a little before it all really took off or
Right.
exploded or became named. Or
Right,
was
which, I mean, I guess begs the question, are they innovators ahead of their time, or were they just doing something
they were just
different?
doing their thing.
Doing their thing.
And yeah, it was super influential because they were the only ones doing that kind of thing at the time, especially because they're from Finland. So
Yeah. Getting corrected on my accent, Media or 9, thank you, Marian. There's my Persian, sorry, say it with a more Persian accent. Point taken, gotta work on my Persian. Lisa, what do we got next? Oh, one of my favorites. We could
VH,
spend all day
bud.
talking about Van Halen. Where did they go? They were just there, now they're gone. Lisa, help me out. Van Halen, Micah Grossman on Facebook says that Van Halen kicked off this genre. Basically, life didn't exist before Van Halen, but that's another episode. Every
I'm with you on
LA-based
that.
band that didn't go the thrash route was trying to emulate Van Halen. I'm sorry, when your second song on your first record is Eruption, just stop what you're doing. Go back to cleaning toilets. Artur Felipe Castanha, Van Halen for Galm. We'll go with glam. Let's see what people say when we get them. I mean, David Lee Roth, pretty glammy.
pretty glammy, and
was
definitely a precursor, I would say.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I've ever considered them glam
put
metal
them
because
there.
they were like,
Fucking rule. Sorry. I'm
yeah,
listening.
yeah, they do fucking rule.
On that note, did I get carried away?
No, but there's going to be an eruption on the chart
Oh,
if
I'm
you
sure.
don't address WTF, Celtic Frost, and Pantera. What happened?
Well, here we go. I don't know if you can speak to this. Pantera.
I know
it's like
Pantera's first one, but I don't know
first
anything
three.
about Celtic.
There's a rug here you can't see, but what basically happened was they swept those first three albums under the rug and didn't want anyone to know that before those Mighty Texan sort of punching bag riffs, they were glam guys from Texas.
Yeah.
So they kind of kept that. It was like the pre-years. Do you have any comment on that? Is that something you're familiar with?
I'm not super familiar with it, but I just know that a lot of the full-time Pantera fans or whatever don't really even listen to them.
Yeah.
But then there's people who don't listen to Pantera but love those records.
It remains, pardon me, there goes my voice again. It remains one of the greatest mysteries, I think, in metal. It's like the fact that on the internet you don't have more bashing and trashing of the first three Pantera records. Anyway, Celtic Frost, whom I love. Morbid Tales, one of my all-time favorites. Yeah, Cold Lake. Woo! Kind of lost the plot there. And after I met with Tom and Martin in Zurich for Extreme Metal a few years ago, I think they kind of agreed. Justin Smith, wait a second. Slayer belongs on there. Look at pictures of their stuff in the 80s. Why? Because they had one photo with a scantily clad girl, and they were
I'm not sure that
taking
I
a bite
can
out
go
of her neck. I
there.
don't know. I don't buy it.
Yeah.
Quadruple Dragon, Pantera, never forget. Fair enough. Trying hard to forget Phil Anselmo right now, but that's another episode all together. Any other bands that you think should be added? With the caveat that generally our approach to this was we didn't want to add bands until we really felt like they made an impact. Obviously, there's hundreds of glam metal
Right.
bands.
And when
But is there anyone
pretty-
of real significance beyond Wasp? We've talked about Van Halen, of course, that deserve to be added.
Well, if we're going, I don't know if we're going into the modern realm now.
Do it. Take us wherever you want.
But I know in some of the pre-debates that Steel Panther was pretty debatable. A lot of strong opinions on that.
I would
so,
argue
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, we might need another show for this, guys. They're like the Dragon Force of glam metal here on the chat.
Of course they're glam metal. I will go toe to toe. And it's funny when...
Like there's no other place they could
Where
ever
else are you gonna
live,
put them?
whether you like them or don't.
Because when we created this in 2004,
They
they
were
were-
metal school.
yeah, and they weren't really on the radar.
No,
yet.
they
We
were
didn't-
still the cover band back then.
That's right, getting up on stage with Morello and D. Martini, playing the great hits from the 80s. So, Steel Panther, Jason A. Lee, Steel Panther is the only honest glam metal band. in capitals. Boldly stated.
It's crazy. I don't know if I'll use the word like honest glam metal band. They've taken that genre. They're really great players and performers, and it's a great show to watch if you're into that. It's almost more of like a Las Vegas stage show. They've got their personas, they've got the acting.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I think they're
whether
brilliant.
or not they're
I think they're
putting
brilliant.
on a show, yeah.
But
Whether
honest
it's
wouldn't be the
here,
word I would use to describe them. Jay
yeah, and
Skill,
then Spinal
Latour.
Tap.
That's right.
Yeah, you could compare them to Spinal Tap in its own way, but they still play and perform that kind of music, and that's what we're debating. So.
Jay Skill Latour on Twitter says, "Aren't they mocking the subgenre? Is Spinal Tap anywhere on the tree?" Dude, have you heard Steel Panther
I don't
play?
think you devote your life to
Like-
this genre unless you absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Like it's
It's not even my style, but when I've seen Steel Panther live, like they pull it off.
Absolutely.
They are very good at what they do.
And they
Take it or
got-
leave it. Easy Chalk says that Steel Panther is a fake band that mocks everything that's glam while being unfunny and sexist. Also, their hair is not real. Artur F. Castanha. Steel Panther is doing a great job of bringing this genre back. Snowflake, APD,
it
Steel
can-
fucking Panther, and Kai Rano.
It
Steel
can be
Panther.
stated that many of these bands had a lot of sexist and unfunny elements to them then.
Right.
I mean,
This is the great divide. Is it mockery? Is it homage? Eli Unger put Steel Panther put there because they are the only glam metal band around today. Their style of lyrics resembles 800s, 80s air band, and we'll see what metal's like in the 800s, eh? And frankly, they are the only glam metal band around today. I think they're in there. I think they deserve to be part of this story. New bands. Sweden, not a country we think of when we think of glam metal.
no, it is.
Well, that's
It's
only
really
because
the
you don't
only-
think of glam metal.
That's true. It's really the only place that it lives.
Actually, don't think much. So anyway, tell me about Sweden. What's going on?
I think Sweden is where it sort of lives now, in terms of the epicenter for it, from what I can tell. And yeah, a lot of the bands, I think the bigger guys out of there are Crash Diet.
Right.
And they influenced a ton of bands because they're, like a pretty popular band out there.
Cool. Basically, the Swedes are out to prove they're going to do every subgenre of metal better than everyone else. Tell me
Man,
what's
they
going
can
on.
play.
Derek Tatum. I would add the modern Scandinavian bands like Crash Diet. That's what happened to the genre. It moved back to Northern Europe where it seems to be thriving. Jacques Guest. There is a lot of great glam metal coming out of Sweden and Finland. Crash Diet, Reckless Love, Santa Cruz, and Crazy Licks.
Yep.
Crazy Licks. Good
Yep.
name. David Zylot. Crazy Licks have great vibes. And Eivunder Gauti. What about new bands like Santa Cruz? By the way, if Sam hasn't got some glitter on, we will be mad. Didn't bring it.
They're angry.
They are angry. Santa Cruz, you know this band?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like a modern,
Swedish band name ever.
but that's the thing because they were super influenced by the California sound.
That's
I
cool.
think the Sunset Strip sound. So they draw lots of influences from that. That's I imagine where they got their name from.
Yep.
But
And
there was
let's not
another
forget,
thing.
Europe, Final Countdown, Swedish band. So there's a tradition there.
True.
There's a tradition. It goes back a way.
Well, I think one of the bands also that kept it going when there was almost no glam bands was Hardcore Superstar.
Good point. Yeah, you're right. There is
so-
that strain of, and even into Norway, there's some bands out there that love that style. The Darkness. I imagine we'll get some opinions on this. BB says if you're going modern, you have to add The Darkness.
Yeah, I
What
think
do you
that's.
think about The Darkness?
I think that's fair. I think that they're one of the only bands that even have something close to this that are on the radio or on
Yep.
and stuff in North America. Like even
sure.
Steel Panther, I don't think they're being played so much on
Haven't
the radio
broke
or in the
through
popular
that way.
realm. Yeah. So
Is there any one of those Swedish bands that you think deserves to be etched in stone here on the chart? Or do you think it's
they're
still at a
saying
point?
there's a lot of different bands coming up here. Santa Cruz would be modern,
Yep.
and then Crash Dive would be you know, they've been around for a
Right,
while,
right.
and then before that would be Hardcore Superstar, and then there's also like Backyard Babies, and there's 69 Eyes, and like
Yeah.
it depends which one was the most
Do you have opinion
influential
about
by
which
the
one
most.
should be
I almost
belong?
think Hardcore Superstar was the most influential
Yep.
to all of those
Yeah,
bands.
because they're kind of like the granddaddy, so to speak.
I think that might be,
Hardcore Superstar.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to get the people on the chat really rallying around their favorite Swedes.
I think
Okay,
so too.
okay. Well, Hardcore Superstars out there, if you have any strong opinions of which Swedish bands belong on the glam metal chart, let's hear you scream. I think probably The Darkness deserves
So what
to be
about
on there as well.
Buckcherry too for modern, a modern kind of? They've been carrying the torch forever.
True enough. Lisa, do we have anybody out there that's saying no to The Darkness, or is it pretty quiet as it stands?
I don't think people want to talk about the darkness. I think unlike Pantera, they do want to forget.
Right. They're like the Dragon Force of glam metal.
There you
Agony
go.
664 supports you, Priya, saying that Hardcore Superstar belongs. Roxanne Shaddix is back. Buckcherry, you heard it here first, need to be on the list if Hardcore Superstar are on there. Fair enough. The Earthbound Lucifer Tiger Tails is glam metal from a place I don't think many people accept it to come from. Wales.
We played with them on the
wow.
Kiss Cruise. They're definitely more along the lines of the Poison, just like super light,
Yeah.
super. You know.
Tiger Tails and Crazy Licks, man. Like these are great names. I'm almost converted. Tyler Croc, a nice discussion, thank you. But can you guys acknowledge Angel and Stars for their early
I
influences?
agree with those.
That's a good point. Actually, we've kind of forgotten perhaps of some of the earlier bands that may not have made like the same commercial impact as say a Motley Crue or a Whitesnake, but certainly.
I've seen some
Stars.
London, some love for London. in
London.
that same category.
Yeah, yeah.
That's Nikki Sixx's.
That's right. Nikki Sixx's original band back in the day. Stars is up there. Okay, this is going to get heated. Did I see Stryper up there, Lisa?
You may have seen Stryper.
But more importantly, it's Daniel Siegelman saying, "Scream for me, Toronto Diamonds."
Hell yeah. Thanks, Daniel.
Okay, we're going to put it over here just because, if nothing else, you need to pay attention to metal from Toronto. Okay, enough about the Swedes. Black Veil Brides. We've got some comments up here. Thrash Maniac 99. Black Veil Brides should be added despite they have followed the path of Motley Crue and seem to try to keep glam metal going today, even though I think they're generic. LOL. Ollie Ray. Black Veil Brides needs to be put on glam metal. And Rookster 1123. Black Veil Brides may not sit here musically, but they definitely look like it just all died. Black Danger Public says that Black Veil Brides deserve to be nowhere. Ouch! So hateful.
Black
What's
Veil
your
Brides.
opinion?
I think that for a time there, especially in the first part of the 2000s, a lot of the glam sat in the Warped Tour kind of bands with
Yep.
with Black Veil
Right.
Brides,
Yep.
Escape the Fate, and all those bands. They kind of encapsulated the look, and they were super influenced by bands like Kiss and Motley Crue. And
Yep.
despite the music that they actually created themselves, there's no denying that those were some of their favorite bands.
Right, yeah, and sort
So-
of going towards that kind of darker look and echoing the comment earlier about corpse paint. Why isn't that glam? Brian Geiger says Black Veil Brides is true blackened glam. Nice. We're inventing new hybrids as we speak. And Yoid, that's like, are you from Wales? I stand by my post, alias, autograph, Brittany Fox, damn Yankees, danger, danger, enough's enough, Great White,
Hell
Kingdom
yeah.
Come, Vixen, Ugly Kid, Joe Steele, Heart, Slaughter, not the one from Toronto, Strapato,
You have some
Lillian
pretty good
Axe,
taste in music.
Replace Quiet Riot. A lot of opinions. You know what though?
Skid Row should be added.
We've got one card.
Oh, is it Black Veil Brides or is it Skid Row?
Oh man.
I saw Stryper. We need to find out. The clock is ticking, people. We need to know. We got some comments from Stryper, on Stryper, I should say. Chris Young, add Stryper, still going strong. Last two albums are excellent. No More Hell to Pay and Fallen. Should be No More Hell to Pray Anyway, Nitro, the Earthbound Lucifer, and what about Nitro? And SC Funk says, I definitely have to agree with the Visual K recommendation. All those boys are glam as fuck. Oh, it just gets more and more popular.
man.
We have to add X
We could go
Japan.
so
Okay,
deep.
it's going crazy there on
I
Skid
can
Row. I
see
can't
that.
keep up.
I think
keep up.
Skid Row is
Okay.
there's going to be some
Oh my
debate
God.
though because they're
Sebastian
along.
Bach, is that you?
Hi, Sebastian. But yeah, no, I think Skid Row, I don't know, they never really saw themselves in this. They saw themselves, I think, as pure heavy metal, but
Yeah.
it's hard to deny the influence. It's hard
For
to
sure.
deny that they weren't living in a vacuum. They lived in the 80s when all that stuff was huge, so it kind of
Absolutely.
played into their music for sure.
But they also were a hair later in the kind of Guns N' Roses
Yes,
thing.
exactly.
So
They're
they
more like
Slave to the
street
Grind.
rock.
It was a bit more like, gritty.
Yeah, gritty.
Little-
And then from there, there's all the bands like that kind of came out of them too. There was like the more aggressive, like the Spread Eagles and like that kind of stuff, you know.
Less pretty, more gritty. I think we do have a pop metal thing on the chart, don't we, Lisa? What we forgot? Did we forget?
Ooh,
Skid Row.
Extreme.
Anyway, back to the board.
Pop
Thrash
metal.
Maniac 99, Twisted Sister needs to go. Since they hated being glam and musically was more an American Iron Maiden meets punk style of metal. Interesting point. They were definitely an older band. People don't know that Twisted Sister like hammered the blues rock circuit for like years before Stay Hungry became a sensation. Eric Suarez, would you call metalcore bands this generation's glam?
I don't think all of them would ever say that they liked Kiss and Motley Crue, but I think a lot of them did because there was a resurgence of those bands when we were younger. Like,
Not if they're straight edge though.
no, I guess not.
Don't fit.
Hey!
Can't fit.
Hey!
There was
Gotta
a
be
lot
badass.
honestly, there was a lot
Gotta
of
be fucked
good.
up. I thought that was part of our criteria. What
I
happened?
think it's a little bit
Come on.
part of it, but then there was like bands like, you know, Cinderella, whom I don't think, like Bon Jovi signed Cinderella, so that was who kind of guided them
Yep.
in their careers. It doesn't mean that they weren't glam metal, it just means, I guess,
Yep.
that they weren't partying or they weren't known for their antics.
Roxanne Shaddix, can Motley Crue be with Quiet Riot at the top of the tree? Sure, Roxanne, we'll put them right up there.
I agree.
We'll keep
I
people
agree that
happy.
they're at the top.
I think they deserve to be up there. Let's do some shuffling of the cards. These guys are sort of side by
Yeah, we're
side.
in the final countdown, as someone once sang.
Yeah, they
to,
sure
the end
did.
of the show. So
Diddly-doo. Mikhail JT, Skid Row, LA Guns. Ugh, why am I backing up glam metal? Jesus Christ. I
LA
find myself
Guns.
saying the same thing. What happened to my sensibility? Ollie
You've
Ray,
changed, man.
we want Black Veil Brides. I ran out of cards, but what about this?
Tora Tora, I think that
We even have a magnet. No one mentioned Tora Tora.
I didn't know if they were going to be considered. I think they're going to be debatable because they were definitely a hard rock and especially very blues-based influence band from Memphis. But they had like the riffs, they had the sound, and like his vocal range
Yep.
to this day is still super falsetto, and like they're an amazing, very, very proficient band.
Paranoid Print Co. says, can we please talk about how Rat are amazing? Sure, Invasion of Your Privacy, Out of the Cellar, where do we start? Or where do we end?
I
Chad
know,
Whitson,
right?
Sam, how could you not put Loudness? They are amazing. It's true. We forgot Japan. We forgot X-Japan. We forgot Loudness.
It's true.
We've ran out of magnets. It's official.
We gotta
Lisa,
do this again next week.
I think we're tapping out here.
I know.
Like, it's going to blow up the board here.
I
We're
don't
running out
even
of
want to
room.
say the
The
word
comments
Skid
are
Row
coming
again.
in like crazy now.
All right.
It's coming in.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this edition on Glam Metal of Lock Horns. Thank you, Priya, for all your knowledge
Thank you.
and contribution. Thank you to Daniel, Lisa, Lana, and Andrew off camera, helping make this happen. A reminder, subscribe to Banger TV if you want to see the creation of the first all-metal global digital channel. And reminder also that Banger is now the official metal curator at Apple Music. Go there. We've got some great playlists. That's it for Glam Metal. We'll see you next week. Pantera, never forget. I'm forgetting Pantera right now. 4 o'clock next Thursday. Bye-bye on Lockhorns.
Bye.